Welcome to session 2. In this session, Steve will talk to you a little bit more about the practical side of your everyday in a life group.
And Shelly will share with you about the personal side of how to minister to students.
Go ahead and grab your notebooks and a pencil and we'll get started.
Everyday expectations. Leaders, it's such a joy to come alongside you, and I want to share with you in this session some of the differences between life groups and D groups. I also want to talk a little bit about what Sunday mornings look like. And so it's the everyday kind of expectation. So if you have your book, it's on page 14, and we'll start from there. All right. Let's talk about the differences between a life group and a D group. Okay. So, and there's a thing called an open group versus a closed group. Let me talk about both of those. One, an open group is where guests and visitors are more than welcome to come and go. There's not a whole lot of accountability built in within those groups, but it is a healthy group where they meet together on a weekly basis and they study God's word and study biblical truth. Then there's the closed group. This is what we call around here D groups. D stands for a lot of different things: dedicated, disciple, discipline, like all those kind of things. But it is a high accountability group, and it is a closed group. In other words, you're not going to allow guests and visitors just to come and go. You're simply going to take about 4 or 5 students, and you're going to meet with them once a week, every other week, once a month, but it's a closed group. And it's high accountability. It's high studying God's word each and every day. Let me ask you questions, accountability questions. And so there's a big difference between what an open group looks like, which is our Sunday morning experience, versus a D group experience, which goes in a little bit deeper. We give our life group leaders the freedom to do both. You don't necessarily have to have a D group, but we're asking you to be a life group leader each and every Sunday. And many times, in some of our leaders, they take 4 or 5 students that are out of their open group and come alongside them and say, hey, I wanted to spend some more dedicated time with you. And let's go through what that looks like. And so in this moment of D group versus open group, hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective. But what we're asking of you on Sunday mornings is to keep it open. We don't want our Sunday morning experience become a D group. We don't want it to become we want to keep the door wide open for more and more guests to come be a part of your group. And your group begins to grow numerically, but also it can grow spiritually as well. Now, there are times in a life group experience when you can go back and forth. You can ask accountability questions on a life group experience on Sunday morning. You can hold students accountable on Sunday mornings. But having the perspective that time that we have is open really helps us. And one of the things that we have seen through the years is that as groups journey through the years, many times they get closed, and it becomes a D group. And if a visitor is ever invited to come, they feel like an outsider. And that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're asking of you, is that you would keep your groups open, that you would keep that mentality, that perspective that guests can come and go anytime at any place. And that your students that are in their life group have the freedom to invite their friends. It's not their one little closed group. And so I want you to think through and create a healthy experience for your students and helping them understand the difference between what an open group is and a closed group. And so I want to talk through a little bit of our philosophy. Like, why do we do what we do in our life group experience? It's not only just that open door for students to be involved, but also it's this understanding that our job, our expectation on Sunday morning of you is to teach biblical truth. That's one of our measures, that we would engage in a biblical community each and every week. And that is your role as a life group leader, is to teach biblical truth. Open God's word. We're giving you curriculum. We're giving you a plan on how you can go about teaching each and every week. And so we want to encourage you guys to do that and to teach biblical truth. It's also a moment of intentional hospitality. That's where open groups come from. Like, it's the welcoming. It's the door coming on in. Please be a part of our group. Please come on Sunday mornings. Be a part of what's going on. And when they do come, we recognize them. We know their name. We're trying to get their phone numbers and information such that we can follow up with them. That's intentional hospitality. And so you're teaching biblical truth, but you're also modeling intentional hospitality, which are 2 values that we have here at Bellevue. Let's talk about a 2-year rotation, how we organize our groups. We organize our groups in very different ways. Some groups are kind of, we ask that, some leaders are like, I want to go all the way through high school with this group of students. And that's wonderful. And I think that's admirable. But what we would ask, what we're going to do with our students is a 2-year kind of rotation. So as they come into their freshman year, what we are going to do is we're going to kind of jumble up the students, right? We're going to take maybe these groups that have been together for 3 or 4 years, and we're going to respectfully, we're going to break them up a little bit and open that up. And one, it's another opportunity to have an open group philosophy here. But then we're also going to do a couple other things. In their junior year, we'll do the same thing. And sometimes leaders come and go. And so our groups are kind of fluid. There are some leaders that can only commit to 2 years, 1 year, it all depends. But the way that we operate, the way that we go about it is on their 9th grade year and their 11th grade year, we kind of mix up the groups a little bit. So as you're coming into being a part of our ministry, just know that you will most likely have a 2-year run with this group that you have. And we have found through the years that 2 years is enough. You get all your stories out, like they know who you are, you get to know who they are, and then you have the opportunity to open the group again and to allow more guests to come and be a part of it. We see that as a healthy pattern of growth for our students and for our groups and for you as a leader. It just expands your leadership. It just expands that opportunity for students to hear more godly voices in their hearts and their lives, and that is a good thing. And so just kind of think through that. That's kind of our expectation, is that how we shuffle the deck every 2 years. Why do we do that? We want to keep it open, right? We want to give students to learn the difference between leaders and adults and those influencers that are a part of their life. And it prevents students from burnout as well. Hearing the same voice all the time, all those kind of things, and even the same group of friends all the time. We just open that door a little bit more. It's a great opportunity for us to come alongside you as a leader and to make sure our groups are healthy. And that's what we want. That's what we desire, for students to be involved in a healthy community of believers each and every week on Sunday mornings. All right, let's talk about what Sunday mornings look like. It's 2 different things. You see there on page 14, 2 different blanks of what Sunday morning was. The first one is connection, all right? Connection is that social time that we give our students each and every Sunday morning. Usually happens before life groups, about 15, 20 minutes before life groups, and a little bit after. You will, when you walk in here on Sunday mornings, you will see that this little cafe area in our big room, it is just a buzzing. They are just a talking, they're socializing, they're getting around, they're playing ping pong, some of them are playing cornhole, and it's just a fun connection time. And that usually happens before and after. The second thing that's important about Sunday mornings is that roll and guest card. So as the students leave Connection, we'll say, all right, it's time to go. And they go into their groups, into those rooms, and we're helping guests get there as well. But as they go into those different rooms, one of the very first things is to just kind of connect with your students. Hey, how are you doing? What's your week going? And as you're doing that, maybe one of your co-leaders or something like that, you're going through that little role and what that looks like. And if you look on page 14, there's a sample of that for you. And it's got boxes and barcodes on it. It's got names and different information that's there for you. But do you simply go around the room and check the box? Really, just check the box. And make sure that whoever's here is there. But if there's somebody that's not on your roll and they're in your room, ding, ding, ding. So a couple little lights should be going off. It's that roll and then the guest card. The guest card is so important. Why? Because it's the spot where we collect information from that guest, from that student, about their cell phone number, their address, where they go to school, different things like that. Make sure you fill that out completely. And we gave you a little ABC acrostic to help remind you. 1A is ask students to fill it out legibly. Make sure that we can read it. Make sure, if anything, you fill it out for them. Maybe you go over, sit next to them. That's intentional hospitality. Sit next to them, fill out that card for them. Make sure that that information is filled out completely. B, be sure to mark the life group at the top of the guest card. We find this each and every week. That little box at the very top, it says what life group hour you're in. That just communicates for us to make sure we get that guest assigned to that right group. C is check that the content is readable. Readable. Make sure all that the numbers, your 9s look like 9s and your 6s look like 6s. Because we have found going through making these phone calls to these students, sometimes we get the wrong number. And usually it's one number off or it's just transposed wrong. So just make sure that that's legible. And then D, document any information about that student that you think we ought to know. Now, it is so important. We need to make sure that if they are, a certain high school or a part of a certain friend group or maybe even a hobby, that really helps you and it helps us in following up with that student and staying intentionally connected with them. So if you could do those things on Sunday morning, that would be incredible. All right, so different ways that we can connect with you. It's that life group leader meeting. That's so important. We have these quarterly meetings, and it's important that you come and that there's some information there that we're going to give you on a regular basis. And it's quarterly, it's 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall. And we gather together, and during that time, it's my heart for those leader meetings is that we don't want something from you, but we're going to give something to you. We have something for you. I don't want to waste your time. I don't. I want to make sure that the content that we deliver is worth your time. And so it's going to be very important. It's not just going to be an administrative meeting. I'm usually bringing in different topics on how to best equip you and different things. And we want you to be a part of those leader meetings every quarter. And inside those leader meetings, we have 2 different tracks. We have a rookie track, and then we have a veteran track. If you're watching this video, you're a new life group leader. And you're a rookie, all right? And so that's a 3-year plan that we have for you. And there is content and stuff that we deliver each and every time we get together. We usually split our groups into that veteran track. We'll have a classroom just for the veterans, and then we'll have a classroom that's just for the rookies, and it's specific training during those times. If you look there on page 15 in your book, you will see some of the 3-year tracks, 3-year topics that we're going to come alongside you. So it's not just in these 4 videos that you have for the initial new leader training, but it's ongoing. We just believe that we have to develop you and to grow you as a leader. I have this mentality that you are a youth pastor, and you are a youth pastor for those students in your group. And so I'm going to come alongside you as best I can as your high school pastor to encourage you, to equip you to be the youth pastor to that group of students that you have with you. I think that's so essential. And we're going to, so many different topics, so many different ways. And we're fixing to have a really special guest here in just a minute to really come alongside you and to equip you on how to handle some of the emotional things, stresses that our students are going through. But, it's so important that we stay connected. Those quarterly meetings help us to do that. Being a part of those rookie veteran tracks help you to do that. But also, it's through email. We communicate a lot here at Bellevue through email. We want to make sure that we have your right email address and that whenever we send an email to you, it doesn't go to spam. So you need to make sure you look at that. But we've had that happen so many different times. But usually once a week, I will communicate to you through a weekly email, usually Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Most likely it's on Tuesdays. But we go through that, have that email with you, and just making sure that you get that email. And there's the content. Sometimes I'll drop a video on there. Sometimes I'm giving you bullet points of different things that are key information that you need to know to announce to your students. But hopefully we're staying connected that way. And just know that Morgan and I will come alongside you as well and ministering to you personally and connecting with you throughout the year. Sometimes it's lunch, sometimes it's dinner, sometimes it's breakfast, sometimes it's a coffee, sometimes it's just a phone call saying, hey, how are you doing? But if we can do anything for you, ladies, you want to connect with Morgan, and men, you want to connect with me. And make sure that you're staying connected. And a lot of times we communicate that information through email. So hopefully that gave you a good idea of what every day looks like and some of the expectations that we have of you. If you want to go back through those notes there on page 14 and 15, make sure you got those fill in the blanks. That'd be great. All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelly Spence, and I get to share with you ways that you can hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And so what I want to share is just 6 points about how you can counsel teenagers at church. Especially in times like this, I think there will be extra need for us to be equipped to listen to them and to know what to do if big things come up. So hopefully at the end of this talk, you'll know kind of what to do. So the first point on your blank, 2 things to know before we start. First of all, before we start, I want you to know that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be a counselor, you don't have to be a pastor, you don't have to know it all. Your job really is to listen well and then help them find the next step. The second point is, I don't want you ever to feel like you need to promise to keep a secret. The truth is, there are some things we can keep confidential for teenagers, but then there's also a few things that we can't keep confidential. And so we never want to promise secrecy because we don't want to break that promise later and break that trust with that student. So for things like abuse or safety issues, risky choices, things like that, those are things we would have to break that trust. So if we just don't even have that secrecy in place to begin with, then we are good to go in building a strong relationship with that teenager. Okay, so I want to share with you a 4-step process for counseling a teenager at church, or listening well, I guess, and knowing what to do. So the first step is listen. And by listen, I mean put your phone away, give them your undivided attention. In our world where parents are very distracted and even peers are very distracted, and so often they're all on their little devices at the same time, they're lonely together, it's very important that they have somebody who gives them direct eye contact and is not distracted by their phones or anything else going on. And so I want you to lean in, I want you to listen to them. As you're listening to them, try not to judge or lecture. Try to lead with empathy. So you might say something like, okay, so what I hear you saying is, and then summarize what you heard them say. Or you might reflect a feeling that you hear them talking about. Maybe you could say something like, gosh, it sounds like you're really angry about this situation. Something else that helps with listening would be to normalize their situation as much as possible, reminding them that they are not alone. Satan would love for them to feel isolated and to feel like they are the only one in the whole world that has ever felt this way or experienced this situation. And it's important for us as leaders to be able to let them know, to remind them that they are not alone. There are other people in the world that are dealing with this, and God has a plan for this. And then I think probably the most important thing when listening to a student is to remember that the first thing they share is probably not the real issue. They are testing you at first to see how you respond and if you're a trustworthy person. And when they find that you're trustworthy, then they will share the real issue, the bigger issue that's really bothering them. So be sure to listen to the end of their story, and then you might ask something like, okay, is there anything else? And that would open the door for them to be able to share more if they choose to. The next step in the process would be to encourage them. So you've listened to their whole story, you've heard them out, and then the next helpful thing is to encourage them. So you're going to offer encouragement through scripture. The very first thing I like to do is to acknowledge the courage that it took for them to even come to you and share. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to share something with someone that maybe you're not even comfortable telling your parents. And so just telling them, hey, I appreciate the courage it took for you to share this with me. I feel honored that you would trust me with that. And I want to help you find help for this. That goes a long way in building trust and in helping this teen to feel safe with you. It's also important to remember that teens lack perspective. They haven't lived enough seasons to know that while today may be hard, joy will come again in the morning. And so helping them to know that this is a season and it won't last forever is also very helpful. You want to offer hope, reminding them that nothing is impossible with God in the hard seasons, and especially with teenagers because everything feels so big. And so in the moment, in the hard seasons, it's good for them to remember that this is not impossible. This didn't catch God by surprise. And then pray out loud over them. There is something so encouraging about hearing the prayers prayed over you out loud. The next step after you have listened and encouraged is to guide them. And this basically is just helping this teenager develop an action plan. And this may start with, if they haven't been having a regular quiet time, maybe that is teaching them how to do that and encouraging them to try that daily for the next week, and you'll hold them accountable. Maybe that is encouraging them to fast from social media for a period of time so that they can focus on gratitude and contentment in the Lord. Maybe it's encouraging them to participate in a hobby or a sport, or to get more involved in life groups, or to come on Wednesday nights. So help them try to figure out a way that they can actually walk in this new encouragement that you've given them. Give them a plan of action. And then the fourth step would be to refer. Thankfully, most of the things that you will deal with teenagers will be taken care of with listening, encouraging, and then helping them come up with a plan of action. Unfortunately, sometimes the bigger issues come up, and when they do, I want you to be prepared. So here's some things that you might want to consider referring. Things like suicidal talk or self-harm or cutting, things like drug abuse or alcohol abuse, sex or other risky behaviors, eating disorders, maybe even things like when a student's not so big concern just seems to persist or is taking, they're contacting you a lot over and over for this same thing. That might be a reason to refer. Or anytime you feel like you're just in over your head, it's okay to refer. And your first step in referring would be to contact our high school ministry staff. You would want to contact Steve or Morgan and just get some direction from them and kind of invite them into the loop there. And then your next step would probably be to contact their parents for issues like these. And the way that I like to do that is I very rarely go behind a student's back and contact the parent for them. I like to give them options. They have no control whether we contact the parent, but they can choose one of 3 ways that we're going to do it. So I'll say, okay, this is a big deal. I think it would be helpful if your parents knew. How would you like to do it? We can go together and tell them, or I can go and tell them for you, or you can tell them while I sit there with you. And those, usually one of those 3 options works well for that teenager. But you want to make sure you bring parents into the loop when it's more risky behaviors and safety issues. And then once you contact the parents and you've let Steve and Morgan in the loop, they will help you know what the next steps are. It might be referring to a Christian counselor here at Bellevue or outside of Bellevue. It might be something else, but Morgan and Steve will be able to guide you in that, so you don't have to do that alone. They'll also encourage you along the way. Once you have referred a student out, please keep in contact with that student. Don't neglect them, don't forget about them, don't forget to text them, maybe even in a week, and just follow up. Hey, I heard you started counseling this week, tell me how that went. I think all of those things are great because we don't want them to feel like this was so big and now people aren't going to talk to me. So keep in the loop, stay connected. Okay, specifically, I want to talk about suicidal talk, especially with the world the way it is and teenagers being isolated and alone. Sometimes this comes up, and I want you to be prepared and know what to do. So one of the things to watch for would be them talking about hopelessness, feelings of hopelessness, or talking a lot about death or lots of questions about death, maybe even thoughts about ending their life, or phrases such as, my parents would probably be better off without me. Those are all red flags that you might want to just draw a little closer to that student and explore with curious questions what might be going on. Some behaviors you might watch for would be depression or sudden changes in their behavior, or if you notice them talking about sleeping a lot, or maybe even an increase in risky behaviors. Those are some red flags and a cue that you want to draw nearer to that student. One of the things that I've learned in working with students over the years, in the beginning I was terrified to ask them to even mention the word suicide or talk about the phrase taking your own life. And what I have learned is that it's okay to ask that question. In fact, it's a very helpful question to ask. You're not going to put that idea in their head just by asking them. So do not be afraid if you feel like this might be a problem for them. Do not be afraid to ask them, have you considered or are you considering taking your own life? The truth is, it's a very loving thing to do. If they are, they will feel like you are a trustworthy person and you can handle it because you've asked them, so you can handle their answer, whatever it is. If they haven't been thinking about it, you won't put it on their radar, you won't put it in their mind because they'll probably be like, oh my goodness, no, I would never do that. And so you won't have to worry so much with that. Regardless of whether you think this is for attention or if it's really a suicidal danger, take it seriously because it's an unhealthy way for asking for help. And so we want to make sure that we get parents involved and counselors involved so that the student can work through these problems. The truth is, in a world full of social media and social distancing and all the things going on right now, most students just want to be heard. A lot of students just want an adult or an older mentor just to be able to listen to them and reflect what's going on. And once they feel heard, they're okay. But make sure that you get them the referral that they need. One last thing I want to talk about is regarding abuse and neglect. So as a youth worker and as a citizen of the state of Tennessee, you are a mandated reporter. And if there's any hint or if there's at any point you suspect possible abuse or neglect, you are mandated, you're required to report that to the Child Protective Services. Abuse can be physical, sexual, psychological, or neglect. And so you're going to watch for things like that in your conversations with your students and things that you notice. The good thing about mandated reporting is we don't have to fear that if we make this phone call and report this, even though we're not real sure if this is really what's going on, we don't have to fear that they're going to come in and take this student away from this family. The truth is they build a file, they build a case over a period of time. And so unless it's a very imminent danger and you have lots of details about what's very imminent to come, unless it's that severe, they're just going to build a file for this family and keep an eye on things. So if you have to report abuse or neglect, you're going to contact Steve or Morgan first, and they're going to walk you through this. And then they'll direct you to the child abuse hotline, and you'll make the report that way. You don't have to have all the details of what's going on. You just have to have a suspicion that something is not quite right there. Okay, this is a lot of heavy stuff. And I want you to know that the majority of your conversations with students do not involve referrals and contacting parents and coming up with safety plans. The majority of your conversations with students, you really will be listening, encouraging, and guiding them. But in the case when maybe something comes up, I want you to know how to handle the bigger stuff without freaking out. I want you to be equipped and know what to do. Just know that you don't have to have all the answers. It's not up to you to fix the problem or solve the problem. You don't have to come up with the solution. You just have to listen really well, encourage them, and guide them to the next step.
Thank you so much for joining us for session 2. Now you're ready for the practical side of leading a life group class.
We're so excited to continue equipping you over the course of the rookie track.
And up next, buckle up and get ready. Steve's going to walk through session 3.